Welcome to the Air Combat Simulation Podcast, brought to you by BVR Productions. Together with content creators, mission builders, experts, and enthusiasts, we explore the comprehensive world of combat aircraft simulation.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Air Combat Sim Podcast. Today we're being hosted by me, Sport, and our good friend Tricker. Say hi, Tricker.
Hello. Hi everybody.
And today we're going to be talking to the guys from Magnitude 3 Simulations and really going in depth with into their next upcoming module, the Corsair. Today we're joined by Hiromachi. He's from Poland and has a quite extensive previous sim history, including IL-2, Cliffs of Dover, Battle of Stalingrad, huge DCS fan. And he's the research manager for Magnitude 3 Simulations. Also joining us is Rudel. He is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran and the lead artist for Magnitude 3. He is a self-taught 2D and 3D artist and have been doing flight simulation art for about 25 years. So we're really excited to have these two guys. So gentlemen, say hello.
Hello everybody.
Hello.
Well, we're really excited to have you guys and talk about your upcoming Corsair module. So who wants to lead off on why you picked the Corsair and sort of where you guys are in the process?
That's definitely an interesting question. It's had a long history with us, obviously, for about 10 years almost. And it started out when we were still Leatherneck Simulations before Cobra left to start Heapler. And we had plans to start a Pacific theater of operations. And the Corsair was one of the aircraft we were going to do.
So you guys chose it and started working on it, and you picked the F4U 1D, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so you guys showcased it on the virtual air shows about 2 years ago, and then you kind of previewed the carrier about a year ago and whatnot. How far along do you guys think you are?
Wow, that has been a while, hasn't it? About 2 years. So during those 2 years, as the lead artist, I've decided to pretty much redo the whole cockpit and external model because it really wasn't up to standards for what was available to do. It took a year to do the cockpit, and we're just finishing up the external model now with the damage modeling. So we're pretty darn close. We're pretty darn close to releasing.
So let's back up here a little bit, Rudel. So you started 25 years ago. What was the first simulation? Let's start with that. Give us some of your background a little bit.
Man, oh man, I was not working with, but I was doing, basically I was a modder, so I would mod Jane's F-15 back in the day, and then I moved on to Jane's F-A-18, where I joined Team Super Hornet, and we were making the patches for those, doing 3D and texturing for that. And at the same time, I was doing IL-2 textures. There was a forum that we joined, and we were doing 3D models and textures for that.
Okay. So did you know Matt Wagner for Jane's F-18?
Not personally, but I knew of him. In the early days, there was a Google groups that you could do. It was a message board style, and once in a while he would show up and answer questions for the users.
So guide us through a little bit here, especially myself. So I knew you guys were Leatherneck Simulations. So what exactly happened, and what are you now?
When the other guys in our team decided to study their new company so they can continue their progress with the F-14 and the Vegan, we decided to use Leatherneck Simulations as a brand name. 3 of us, before Hiromachi joined, we started Magnitude 3 as the company name and used Leatherneck as the brand name. Eventually, we decided we'll just drop the brand name and just stay with Magnitude 3 because reading the message boards and the emails, there seems to be a lot of confusion, and we wanted to clear that up.
Okay. And so you do all the 3D modeling and artwork, I'm assuming, for Magnitude now?
I do a lot of it, but I also guide other artists that are on our team.
Okay. And then Hiromachi? So what is your role with Magnitude?
Well, my role started mainly as a PR guy. I started looking into the Facebook, the Twitter back then when we had in the forums, but eventually it started growing larger. Let's put it that way, that for the previous 7 to 10 years, I've been extensively researching the Japanese aircraft. So it only came natural when I saw the Corsair developing for the DCS that I would like to join the team that was developing it and provide some information. With the passing time, I actually have developed a significant interest in the Soviet aircraft and started collecting the documents. So you can say that I have basically changed myself merely from a person looking into the PR into a person also responsible for researching, for providing the materials for the development. That would start with the pictures, with the documents. As you may imagine, Poland, being a former Warsaw Pact member, had a pretty significant, you can say, library for the documents for the things like the MiG-21.
Yeah. And so you guys are still doing all the MiG-20 stuff, MiG-21 stuff, correct? Or you guys are still all patching the MiG-21 and working with the artwork, is what I was getting at.
Oh, of course, definitely.
So, I mean, I had never really thought about that, about the amount of research that goes into developing modules and making sure that you're creating an accurate simulation. So like you said, you must have a pretty extensive collection of various documents. What sort of things are you researching when it comes to either developing a new module or even updating the modules that you guys already have, released? And that's for you, Hiromachi.
Well, it depends for whom am I researching. For the Rudel, when he has to make a model, it starts with the pictures. Today's technology allows us to get much deeper into the materials. So, for example, for the Corsair, we went as far as to find the technical drawings that would be used for the manufacturing in the manufacturing plants for the creation of real thing. Basically, you would adjust the factory based on those drawings, and you could manufacture the aircraft. With the MiG-21, it's not so easy since the aircraft would be manufactured in the Soviet Union. However, you can go around it by taking a fair number of pictures and turning it into a model using photogrammetry, or you can use other technologies like laser scanning. So that's, but of course, everything has to be supplemented with the pictures. After all, you need to also get the color and the accuracy of the things that not always can be recreated with the photogrammetry. When it comes to the programming, then you need the technical documentation. There are usually the manuals covering basic systems like the airframe, engine, avionics, the hydraulics, the pneumatics, and electrics, whatever you name. And there are often documents that cover the specific items that are described in greater depth. So that usually consists of hours of finding the documents and scanning them. I can honestly say that I've spent probably good few hundred hours in the library just scanning the documents.
Wow, that's super impressive, and obviously it's noted in the work you guys have done. So you have the two of you, obviously, and how many other people are on your team working on various projects?
Well, other than the two programmers, myself and Hiromachi, we hire art teams to help us, such as they've worked on the carrier for the F4U project. They worked on the Japanese ground assets for us. We have an artist that works on our pilots. So we've got a fair amount of artists, and we're about to have another artist or two to help work on other projects that we're coming out with.
Excellent. So you guys definitely have it covered in the art department there. Programming wise, who are the guys working with the various programming aspects?
For programming, we have our excellent flight modeler Novak. He's a Serbian aviator. He's a pilot himself in the military, and we have other one. He goes by the name of Roland. He works in the automotive industry as well as I guess you could say mobile gaming.
Excellent. Okay, so for this, this is not anybody's full-time job then. You guys are all sort of part-timers and have come together to, form this development group to make modules for DCS.
Well, exactly, that's what you can say. We've basically decided to turn something that's been a passion for all of us, which is the aviation, and create something that can bring joy to other people.
Okay, well, I mean, that makes a heck of a lot of sense there, and you guys have obviously taken that passion and put it into modules you are passionate about. So far, you guys had a absolute grand slam with the MiG-21, which remains, I know, one of my favorites and the favorites of many of my friends. And you have the CE2 out as well, which, how did that come about originally?
Oh man, that's a good one. Novak, he loves aerobatics as a pilot, so he wanted to do a aerobatic aircraft, and we chose the Christian Eagle. But we also used the Christian Eagle as a stepping stone to create the F4U Flight Modeling.
That was my understanding too, that it was originally more of a technology demonstrator for you, correct?
That is correct.
That's pretty interesting. What would you say? Let's talk about the F4 now. So let's talk about what would you say is so far from your guys' experience is the hardest thing working on the F4, and also do you have like an SME, like a subject matter expert working for you for the F4?
Well, we definitely can say that the hardest things were the pipes in the cockpit. All the, I'm sure Rudel loves to speak about it. All the pipes, wires, and cables that you can see in the cockpit, that you will be able to see in the cockpit, that's all uncovered and visible. So that's a huge problem from any artistic situation.
Yeah, it was definitely a pain in the butt. Using pictures and schematics and cross-referencing. It was so much to do.
And obviously, you get in any of these old World War II airplanes, and no two of them are identical to each other. It's almost like every single one that came off the production floor had a slightly different configuration. And of course, now, 75, 80 years later, they've been modified and things moved around. How did you settle on the details and the configuration of the aircraft that you wanted to model?
I really went off the schematics and the modification records to ensure there was, a pretty good accuracy for the late 44 and early 45 variants.
And off the recording, you mentioned that you had a actual serial number that you were kind of basing some of your artistic decisions on.
So the Airframe Reference that we used was actually built by Goodyear, and it's only the cockpit section, and it's located at the Maps Air Museum in Canton, Ohio. A gentleman by the name of Tom Thiessen took a ton of pictures for us, and I was able to use those pictures to help create the textures that you'll see in the cockpit, such as some of the labels, the placards, and also help develop the 3D for the cockpit itself. What's interesting about the airframe that they have, though, is everything that's in the cockpit makes it look like an early 1944 variant. However, it was actually built in January 1945, which made it kind of difficult when I was cross-referencing between the schematics and the aircraft itself. It was really confusing.
So Hiromachi, with the documentation that you've had to find for researching the Corsair and everything, what kind of narrowed your focus into the model that you guys are actually trying to replicate?
Well, the necessity to find, the Corsair does not have any extensive avionics. You won't find in it anything that you could even compare, let's say, to the FA-18. So you spend a lot more time on the documents which matter from the flight model perspective. Something that, well, this is pretty simple geared aircraft with the cables. Things that are mostly helpful would be the documents from the NACA. In the 1930s, this was a leading institution in the aerodynamics research, and what they have is a truly incredible collection of the documents And this is now available on the NASA website, by the way, so anyone can download those documents, at least most of them. Some of them are available in the libraries, and you can find a pretty significant collection of the documents which cover how the airframe was created, how it changed during the development, how they arrived basically at this gull-wing position, how they built those massive radiator things that you can see at the wing roots, and how the aircraft design was changing throughout the development. If you remember, the early X4U had the canopy positioned slightly more forward, and as they were changing the design, it had to go all the way backward, which has extended the nose. The Corsair will be probably the aircraft with the longest view from the cockpit all the way to the nose, which will affect somehow or obstruct your ability to take the deflection shots. You just have to consider all those feet that you're looking at of the flat area. This also caused some problems in the development. They had to raise the canopy and raise the seat. So those things that you can understand where this aircraft came from, all the way where it arrived in the 1944, and how those changes that are important for the flight model were taking place from the engineering perspective and from the people who are, taking at the time the cutting edge technology.
So all these documents are on the NASA website, you said?
Yes, exactly.
How did you come across those?
How
did you find out about that?
It's been about 10 years ago when a friend of mine on another product has introduced me to this when he was working on the P-51's flight model. And he has shown me what can be found there. And ever since I've been interested or intrigued.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then, Rudel, how did you find the schematics? Like, how does one go about finding schematics? Is it just a Google search, or do you gotta go somewhere gotta know somebody?
Actually, Hiromachi found it.
So if I need some documents, I just go to Hiromachi. Okay.
Pretty much.
he's your scrounger, isn't
For
he?
as long as it's legal.
Documents on my Hoover vacuum cleaner.
Well, give me a couple hours, unrestricted access to the account, so I can run the eBay, and you'll have your documents.
Awesome.
So, over the years, you guys obviously researching all these modules. What sort of lessons have you learned, Hiromachi, in your research? Like, what lessons have you taken forward to get the relevant information that you need to work on a module like the Corsair?
Well, you can be surprised by the amount of things that you can find available in the internet. Like, I had a struggle at various institutions, specifically the US Navy ones, when it comes to accessing the documents for the aircraft. And we're speaking about the aircraft long out of service. And simultaneously, you could find the manuals, like real paper manuals, not the photocopies or anything, available on eBay, let's say, or some other websites. And it's just surprising how many things can be found still in people's hands.
Yeah, I was picturing one of you guys going to like the museum or something and asking for schematics and then taking pictures. I guess that's what I was thinking about.
Well, that's actually also a thing. I've been a few months ago in Germany, in Cottbus. That's about 50 to 70 kilometers from southeast from the Berlin. They have a wonderful collection of the formerly operated by the East Germany aircraft, and this collection is in very good condition. So whenever they also have some library, let's say, collection of the documents. So I could cover at the same time some documents and mainly look into the aircraft, take the pictures of the MiG-21, which we have displayed in our newsletter in June. Those pictures were exactly taken in the Cottbus.
Wow, that's pretty cool. What is your opinion on working on an Imperial aircraft instead of a metric system aircraft?
Love it.
Does it actually make it easier for you as a artist, especially a U.S. based artist?
Actually, but I don't mind both really. I work in the metric system, but it's after doing it for so long, you just kind of memorize the conversion numbers in your head, and it's just model from there. You can model it in the Imperial system and then resize the model later when you finish into the metric system.
Yeah, I usually just ask Siri.
So let's talk a little bit about the Corsair that you guys are developing, the variant that you're putting out there. Is this the only variant that you're going to be working on, or are we going to get any others down the road, or maybe even some post-World War II variants?
At the very moment, we're just going to be releasing the 1D, but I have aspirations to create the Dash 4 or even maybe a Dash 5.
And those came with the 20 millimeter cannons as opposed to the 50s, correct?
The Dash 4 came with two variants as well. There was a Dash 4B that had the cannons. The 5 had the cannons for sure.
Can we talk about the sounds? I was gonna get into the sounds. Everybody knows I love sounds. So did you guys go out and like record some sounds, or did you? How does that process?
There is a company in, I believe it was Sweden, that actually recorded professional sounds for the Corsair, but it was from a 1A variant, but they're still usable, and we're using some of those sounds, and we're looking to how do you say, modify the sounds to sound better in the game than what you hear in the recordings.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love sounds, so it always makes you feel like really, immersed if you got the right sounds.
There's nothing like hearing an R2800. It's a beast.
It really is. It's such a cool engine and iconic, nonetheless, especially in that configuration in the Corsair. And that's attached to that massive prop. And offline, Hiromachi, we were talking about, like, in your research, you found that the Corsair, through its development, had different propellers, and you even had to research, like, how that came about, correct?
Well, not necessarily how it came about. I was looking specifically for the type, but in one of the documents I have found the exact history how it came about, and unsurprisingly, it was during one of the tests, the performance trials conducted in the 1944 when they were comparing the Hellcat and the Corsair. The Corsair was, as you may remember, Corsair had a very struggling development process, unlike the Hellcat, and the performance figures that were coming for the Corsair were slightly off, so they have decided to switch the propeller from the Hellcat to the Corsair, and the unit that they have re-implemented into the Corsair ended up in the mass production, slightly improving the top speed and the climb rate. So it was overall it was favored by the Navy at that point.
So going back to the sounds, sorry, I love talking about sounds. Does it have the whistling death, or is it gonna have it?
Well, yeah, it'll definitely have it.
Nice.
If you watch the air show variant, you should be able to hear it, actually.
That's awesome. That's going to be great. That's going to be a great experience to hear that, roaring around, especially in the Marianas. And I know we're expecting Eagle Dynamics to release a World War II version of the Marianas map. Are you working with them at all on the release of the Corsair with that? Is that going to be connected at all, or are you guys doing that completely independently?
Well, it's more on the Eagle Dynamics side to develop. Like we're merely developing the module. We're certainly coordinating with them on some fields for the benefit of the community. But there are certain things that we still want to keep under the tarp. Covered before we can speak, especially since this is a coordination with the Eagle Dynamics.
And one of those things being, we've seen you guys release some teasers of some of the assets that you're developing as well. What's the plan on the release of these assets, and like what's the scope that you guys are looking for?
The assets will be included with the F4U along with the aircraft carrier, so the users won't have to buy an asset pack separately when we release the module, and of course our missions that we're creating will include those objects.
That's awesome. And so, like, how extensive? I saw some of the Japanese tanks and anti-aircraft guns. Are we going to see any AI Japanese aircraft, or what's the plan for that?
We have an A6. We have a Zero that I've been working on personally that I would like to turn into an AI asset as soon as we finish the Corsair. But I'm not quite sure how soon we can get it out.
That would be really cool, especially to have a natural foe of the Corsair flying around as well. I'm excited to see all of that, especially with the World War II version of the Marianas map. to give a really nice period correct feel to the Pacific Theater. Are your missions going to be based on that as well?
Well, we have come in contact with one of the developers of the campaign developers for the DCS, the Reflected. He's going to develop for us missions, not only the training ones, but also some single missions and the mini campaign. And I'm certainly convinced that the historical aspects will be taken into account. Again, this is a bit of my field when it comes to the research. So depending how the World War II Marianas will end up, we'll be able to recreate some of the combat, some of the events that happened in the 1944 when the Marianas were a main focus point for the U.S. Navy.
So let's talk about the Essex. That thing is looking super sexy, if I do say so myself.
The Essex is definitely a first for, I think, DCS, given the fact that it has so many weapons. It has a bridle system for the catapults, and a lot of arrestor wires, so you have a chance to catch the wire and not miss.
Okay, and that actually brings up a really good point. So you watch footage from World War II of carrier operations, and inevitably you do a Google search and you find a gazillion videos of airplanes overshooting all the wires and crashing into either a barrier or the airplanes on the other edge of the deck. Are you guys going to have a barrier, or are we going to go careening off to everybody who's parked on the deck?
The barriers are modeled. However, we're going to be working with Eagle Dynamics to try to get it implemented.
And along those lines, is the Essex going to have any of the features of the supercarrier? Are we going to have any animated deck crew members? Are we going to have paddles or anything like that?
At least for paddles, but we're not positive about the deck crew just yet. Doing the deck crew is definitely going to take some time to do with all the animations. And of course, if we were to do a supercarrier type Essex, we would definitely need Ed's support in doing that. One of the challenges for the deck crew itself would be the animations. So unlike the supercarrier, where the deck crew is guiding aircraft around with their little lights or doing a signal with their arms and legs, the deck crew for an Essex would literally have to push airplanes around. And of course, there's different size aircraft that would be on the deck. And so we would have to create animations for each and every single aircraft that would be available at that time. And for the paddles animation, what I'm thinking about doing is using the animations code and system that controls the optical landing system for the carriers. I'll use that same code and animation for the paddles instead, and hopefully that works out. But I haven't gotten to that part yet, but we will definitely be testing it.
Oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. The logic at least works the same there. And with the Essex, how many parking spots are you guys going to include with it? Because, obviously, again, you look at pictures and footage and you see, dozens of airplanes on the deck. Are we going to be able to launch a obscene number of airplanes from a deck like in a big strike?
Well, the way the AI system it currently works, I don't think it'll allow it like what you would see in the movies during World War II, but we're currently working on the taxiing routes and the parking spots, and we're trying to keep it where the middle is open so the users can still land safely and take off while there's people parked on either side of the port side or the starboard side. Users will also be able to go down into the hangar as well as the AI. Yeah,
I was going to ask, is there going to be a hangar and also an elevator to go down? That's also in the middle, isn't it?
Oh, there's 3 elevators. There's the one on the port, one in the bow, and one on the stern.
Okay. What carrier? I thought there were some carriers that had some elevators like in the middle of the carrier, or was I just dreaming?
Directly in the middle? I
have no idea. Maybe that was like a Japanese carrier or something. Don't mind me.
You mean centered on the deck, right? Not at the edges?
Yeah,
that would be correct. That would be the Japanese.
Okay. I must have been watching Pearl Harbor and saw that, and I was like, oh, that's cool. But you're doing the wrong side.
Nice.
But maybe one day in the future there will be a red World War II aircraft from the Pacific Theater. I can only wish.
Oh, believe me, I dream of having an Akagi in the DCS.
Oh boy, you're you're shooting for the stars, aren't you? And that actually brings up a good point, though, just because obviously the Corsair wasn't only operated by the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Marine Corps, but obviously saw a pretty large foreign export during and after the war. What other liveries are you planning with the launch of the Corsair?
Well, since we're at the beginning, since we're only releasing the Dash 1D, we're still going to include some liveries that you would find on the Dash 1A or even Dash 4 or the AU1, as well as Canada, New Zealand, England. Who else? Anybody else? A few from the Soccer Wars.
Oh yeah, that's pretty infamous as well. Any I know our Kiwi friends down in New Zealand are wondering if they're going to see any RNZAF liveries.
Absolutely.
Oh, most definitely.
Excellent. Okay, that'll make them happy.
I have a guy lined up that he's crazy about it, and he definitely wants to do them for us. So we'll get some authentic ones coming.
We have some questions from the community, and one of them was saying, what additional air assets are being planned for the Essex, if we can talk about that, with torpedo bombers, scout bombers, or is it just going to be the Essex and the F4 that we're talking about here on an early release?
Just the F4 for now.
Okay. And then also another question from another user is, are we going to have a barricade to use on the Essex?
We'll be working with Eagle Dynamics to create a barrier. It's definitely modeled right now, but to get it to work, we're going to be working with it to get that working. But it may not be available during early access.
I hope it is, because that's where my first landing is going to be.
Wow, that's pretty ambitious, because mine's going to be probably either into the fantail or over the side when I try to go around and forget about all the torque that engine creates.
Wasn't there some old games, like old 1990 games that had a Corsair and you had to land on the aircraft carrier? I always landed short.
I think that might have been the Combat Flight Simulator 2, I believe.
Okay.
I had a copy of one. I can't recall on the top of my head if it also had the Corsair, at least flyable Corsair, not the AI, but I think that was the one.
It's about 25, 30 years ago now that I'm talking about.
I'm also really curious about the weapons you guys are including, because I've seen a few screenshots and it looks like you guys are, obviously the 1D had the hard points for rockets and whatnot. What sort of external weapons are we going to see coming with the Corsair?
Well, starting with the standard M2 Brownings that everyone is a big fan of, the aircraft is going to have rockets, HVAR rockets that would be. The bombs, most types of the bombs that were available during the given time. We're actually also considering the British bombs at a later date to get the Corsair certain versatility. Since we're hoping for a fair number of the skins, it would only be natural to also include some ordnance that would be compatible with the British skins, FAA skins that would be, and the top of the crown would be here the bat bomb that would the radar guided free floating, so to speak, the bomb that's definitely going to be something special in the TCS.
Yeah, can we talk about that real quick? What exactly is that?
Yeah. And
I honestly thought this was some modern thing. So can you please talk about that? It's going to be included in the video for the screenshots.
Yeah, I've never seen that thing before, but I'm super curious in it.
Oh, the actual thing was called at the time a special weapon, Mark 9. It's been a low-angle flight, self-controlled airborne bomb. You can basically, if you want to imagine this thing, and I'm not merely saying for the picture perspective, but for operation, it's a glider that's wrapped around the 1,000-pound bomb with the radar and the gyroscope stabilizing unit for the correction for the flight. This thing, to simplify the explanation, is basically looking for the largest object its radar can find and just trying to glide there.
So this is like a first smart weapon, I guess you would say.
Well, it's pretty impressive if you consider that it was developed during the World War II, and it's been actually put into operational service with, I believe, some 3,000 units produced.
And what were its primary targets? I guess ships?
Well, it could be used against the ships, and it was used in that way on board of PBYs. And again, I'm speaking here from the memory. I think it was also employed in Burma against the British.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, I've never seen this before, so I honestly, like I said, I thought it was like a modern smart weapon you guys were working on. So this thing actually saw service.
That's what makes it so special and secret.
Only carry one of these, I'm assuming.
Well, one is enough for a ship, that is, unless we're speaking about the battleship. But generally speaking, 1,000-pound bomb is a pretty significant explosive.
Yeah, I'm assuming this goes on the center line.
Yes.
Okay.
And okay, so is it only radar guided? Was there any man in the loop control? And what sort of range did this thing have? Because obviously it has small little wings and a stabilizer in the rear, so obviously it's a little bit more of a standoff weapon. So what sort of control did the pilot have over it after he released it, if any? And then how much range did it have?
Well, depending on the altitude of the release and the various factors starting from the weather, the dropping speed, the theoretical, at least, I do not know the practical, would be around 17 nautical miles. As a glider, it had a pretty decent gliding capabilities. No, the pilot would not have means to control it. Once it's released, it's homing on the target, and you better fly and run away from the explosion.
So don't drop this next to a friendly aircraft carrier is what you're trying to tell me.
And definitely don't drop it on the takeoff deck.
The words to live by right there. Yeah, I only ask about the man in the loop question just because I know the Germans had some very early radio guided bombs that they could release from Heinkels, so I wasn't sure if this was anything similar to that.
No, this was a bit different. It actually, most of the time, would be employed by the means of two aircraft. You would have a larger aircraft with a search radar, something like a PBY, and it would use its much larger radar with the radome to locate the target, where the plane would head to the target, and the radar transmitter in the weapon would be directed towards the selected target. And furthermore, the target data from the radar in the bomb will be displayed on a separate indicator, the so-called bat scope.
The bat scope. Is that something that Batman would use, or?
That's exactly an association I had in mind.
It's the actual nomenclature in the manuals.
I'm going down the screenshots you guys
awesome.
sent, and I'm actually blown away by the Essex here. But I do want to talk about my favorite picture is actually the cockpit at night. So we talk about the artistry that you did, or the painting. I mean, how did you create this? This is amazing. The UV work is what I was talking about.
Thank you. It's created using multiple layers of textures, actually, to get that look when only one light is on, or two lights are on, or all of the lights are on. And it really is a masterpiece, and I'm kind of proud of it.
No, you should be proud of it because it looks freaking amazing. Out of all the pictures, I think this is my favorite, and it's not even of the airplane; it's inside the airplane.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be doing some low light angle sorties in this thing, just so I could use that. Now, if I remember correctly, that effect in the cockpit, those the dials themselves were painted with a almost a radioactive paint, I think, and they react to UV light. Correct?
That is correct. They had a phosphorus paint that contained radium, and it would only glow when the light would shine on it. It's not a glow in the dark type paint.
But it reacted to the UV lamps in the cockpit.
Not just UV lamps; it would react to any type of low blue, purple light that you would shine on it.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I wasn't sure if you could go tanning while you were in the cockpit as well. If you put the little goggles on.
The light bulbs were actually halogen. You have to hold the switch on the control panel for a few seconds for the light to start up. But if you switch it to the clear filter, it's actually just like I said earlier, just a white halogen bulb.
And is that startup period modeled in the in your Corsair?
At this very moment, it's just on and off for testing purposes, but we will be implementing it for early access.
Well, that's awesome. And like Tricker said, going through the screenshots there, the texture work is absolutely phenomenal, and which is no surprise. You know, kind of switching gears a little bit. You know, the MiG-21 is one of Tricker and my favorite modules that you guys have put out, and the texture work in it is absolutely phenomenal. It's also now quite a few years old. So, what are your plans with it going forward, and you know, what sort of the development phases are you in with it?
Well, I've been actually gearing up for this revamp, so to speak, of the MiG-21 for the first half of this year, mainly focusing on the new documents, the things that we had back in the 2014 for the release of the aircraft. We have nearly doubled our library with the variety of the documents and collecting basically the new pictures. I think this is the most important part, actually, the visually from the user perspective, the cockpit. We've done a fair comparison of the cockpit currently we have and the one that we could generate using the photogrammetry, if not the better sources. Well, it just shows that our cockpit has aged. The module has been in use for it's 8 years now almost. So the starting point will be the graphics, as this will dictate all the other changes eventually. The changes in the geometry and further retexturing will also dictate the repositioning of the gun sight, the repositioning of the SPO RWR. And for example, the change of the position of the gun sight will, of course, will require the complete realignment of the and the recalculation of it for the weapons employment.
It's a lot of stuff coming, and just what Sport was talking about is the MiG-21 is one of my favorite modules. Besides the F5, the F5 is my favorite, but I love the MiG-21, and my favorite thing is being in the MiG or the F5 and getting hit by two R60s at the same time. You know, MiG-21 firing two missiles at the same time, right to the face. That's my favorite way to die.
Well, the missiles are definitely an interesting thing. With the Mirage coming, it came to my attention that the MiG-21 in Iraqi use, I believe, and more recently in the Romanian use is running the Magic missiles. So at this point, I'm basically preparing the materials, the documents, and pictures, so that we may possibly implement in the future the Magic missiles for the MiG to extend those capabilities, since I know there are crazy people trying to use the MiG-21s in the more modern environment and hunting the people flying the F-16s and F-18s.
I think you just drove like half the community wild with that statement.
Yes. But I was going to ask, how big is your hard drive with all these documents? Because it sounds like you have a ton of documents.
Well, I have 3 hard drives, but I think you should ask the Rudel how much space he has for all this artwork.
Oh, no.
Fair point.
I have a stack of, I'm looking at it right now, 6 hard drives in a RAID right now. So about 30 terabyte RAID system, and I'm only using maybe 17 terabytes right now of artwork.
No wonder why you have so many fans in the background. You got so much hard drive space. Need to cool it off.
It's not to mention the nitrogen farm he has in the backyard to supply the cooling.
You just have to think of the amount of hamsters running in his basement.
I got them. I have hamsters, rats, mice. I got it all. I got a whole zoo here.
Well, off topic, what's your favorite document to go back and read? Do you have like a favorite document you like to bring up and read all the time, or since you love documents so much?
Well, I love researching them, that's for sure. I find it fairly interesting since my education never came close to the math or physics. So reading things that are specifically written for the engineers and the technicians, it's a more interesting intellectual challenge for myself. I don't have a specific favorite document, but I definitely prefer reading on the radars and the weapons. The things that go eventually boom.
So is it true that the MiG-21 is powered by vodka?
I heard rumors that the Russians would put vodka actually in the alcohol tank for the radar systems. They didn't have alcohol.
So if someone buys the MiG-21, does it include a free sample of vodka from Magnitude?
Well, if we ever make a physical copy, that's a thing to consider.
I'm only kidding.
Please drink responsibly, kids. And actually, it did make me think about it with you guys redoing the geometry of the cockpit and all the textures in there. Is that going to also help improve the optimization of it? I do notice that it is, in its current form, I mean, heck, it's 8 years old and it's running fantastic, but it is one of the more taxing modules to fly sometimes on my computer.
I'd like, the new model and textures would help with the frames, with the FPS.
So that, and I mean, I do want to pivot maybe to with a module that's 8 years old, because if I remember correctly, the MiG-21 was the first third-party module for DCS, correct?
That is correct.
I mean, 8 years on, what is the product support like, and what are the challenges going forward on maintaining it with each new iteration of DCS?
That'd definitely be more of a question for the programmers. From the art side, it's fairly simple, but it's time consuming because I'm trying to work on other modules. When Eagle Dynamics introduced physical based rendering, it was right in the middle when I was working on the Christian Eagle 2. So when the Christian Eagle 2 was being developed, I created the texture specifically for that rendering engine. But the MiG-21, I had to kind of band-aid the textures so they would look okay in the system. The cockpit is not 100% PBR ready.
Well, I still think it looks fantastic. It's like I said, it's one of my favorite modules to fly. I love flying it in VR. I tell you what, it feels like you're literally operating a steam-powered airplane. Something like out of the Wizard of Oz, just with all the knobs and switches everywhere. So, for 8 years old, it's
my
awesome.
favorite part is landing.
Oh, man.
Because I always feel like I'm going to crash.
I don't have that problem because I usually get shot down before I have a chance to land.
I mean, I just always feel like it's such like a high attitude coming in. There's no slats, obviously, but it's just, I'm always like, I'm like, man, am I going to crash or is this going to be a good landing? Because you can't really see over the cockpit really.
Well, as with the pilots I had a pleasure to speak, they always describe it as it's more of a fall rather than a descent. So, yes, you would be correct in that.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad the real pilot said that. Gives me a little bit more reassurance that I suck.
I suppose it'll be good training for the Corsair coming out, with that long nose in front of you that you can't see over either. So I think Magnitude 3 is doing a great job of creating modules that you can't see out of the front of. I'm joking, of course, but I mean it's you guys have impressed me with every release so far with both the MiG-21 and the Christian Eagle. And I think the Corsair is going to be absolutely phenomenal. And I know that there are some other things in the pipe that we're not going to touch on today, but I'm truly excited for what you guys have in the future.
Thank you so much. We're definitely happy that you guys are enjoying it and all the users that have bought it. We're definitely glad they're enjoying it.
No, I'm excited, and I appreciate all of you guys coming on to the podcast today and joining us. Do you have anything else you'd like to say before we sign off here?
Well, my usual spiel when I'm doing other interviews. I definitely want to thank everyone for having us for the interview. I want to thank all the users that have been supporting us over the years and have faith in us.
Yeah, I would like to definitely join Rudel here in this, thanking all the community. I hope they'll enjoy this interview, and we'll be happy to see you next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess my last question for you guys is, do you have a targeted release time period for the Corsair? I had to get that one in at the end.
Well, we don't give out dates anymore, unfortunately, for reasons.
Do you give out years?
Give out centuries?
I'm down with that.
It's what I can say is we are definitely at the end stage of development. We're working on the carrier, finishing up on some of the small things, the Corsair. Really all I have left is the damage modeling. And the Japanese tanks, we're just about finished programming them. As you see in the screenshots I provided, they're rolling around, they're shooting.
Well, I can't wait to shoot back at them, and you guys definitely have me hyped for this. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to you guys or maybe some other people in your team when you get, really when the release is imminent, and, we can help bring the community into the much anticipated next release for Magnitude 3.
Most definitely.
Yeah, we want to thank all of our users for submitting questions for Magnitude. Really appreciate it. Make sure you follow us on your favorite podcasting software, whether it be Apple, Google, whatever, all the good stuff, YouTube. Make sure you follow the YouTube channel as well.
And that just about does it for me. Tricker, did you have anything else?
No, that's it, man.
Yeah, so am I. Well, we want to thank everybody for joining us. Rudel and Hiromachi, thank you so much for joining us today. Tricker, thanks for co-hosting with me, and we will catch everybody on the next episode of the Air Combat Simulation Podcast.
We love you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Air Combat Sim. Don't forget to subscribe or tell a friend about it. You have a question, idea for an episode, or a special guest you'd like us to invite? Feel free to reach out on Facebook, Discord, or via email. Air Combat Sim was brought to you by BVR Productions.